Wait, it's not up.
Picture mute.
There we go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We're gonna do America. There we go. All right. So our presentation is American Uncensored. So we're gonna be exploring like what it really means to be an American. So just a brief history about America. It has been a democracy like for over 200 years now, and issues that were important like in its early days are still as important today, such as like big government versus small government, individual rights versus group rights, free market versus controlled market, and connection with domestic affairs versus with international affairs. So like this presentation, we're gonna be exploring like what it really means to be American again, and enlighten you more about the American culture.
So after America separated itself from Britain in the late 18th century, we created this government that kind of checks and balances itself. So we have this kind of idea called federalism, and it's the separation of federal government and central and local governments, such as state governments. And we also have 3 branches of government. And it kind of just like creates like an idea that one monarch, such as when we were controlled by Britain, can't control like the people. So we have the idea of evil of government. So after we separated from Britain, we kind of like got away from that, and no taxation without representation. So stuff such as like the Boston Tea Party can't happen again, and this inherent distrust of government.
Alright, before we show you this video, we are kind of like shown at a very young age how important the Constitution is, how important democracy is. So like this is actually a show from like a couple decades ago, but like we just as far back as then, they still like kind of instill that idea of how important constitutional law and democracy is. And you guys were talking about the need to like educate people on the importance of these things, and like this is one way we do it here. So maybe this is like a chance for you guys to see what we do. So we're not treating you like children. This is just what we watch when we're children. It works.
Welcome to America. There we go.
Hey, do you know about the U.S.? Do you know about the government? Can you tell me about the Constitution? Hey, learn about the USA. In 1787, I'm told our founding fathers did agree to write a list of principles for keeping people free. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country, and so our people spelled it out, the things that we should be. And they put those principles down on paper and called it the Constitution. And it's been helping us run our country ever since then. The first part of the Constitution is called the Preamble and tells what those founding fathers set out to do. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare at hand, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And 1787, I'm told our founding fathers all sat down and wrote a list of principles that's known the world around. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country, and so our people spelled it out. They wanted a land of liberty, and the preamble goes like this. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America, for the United States of America.
Alright, so as this video just kind of pointed out, the Constitution is sort of kind of the framework for our society, and it's written way back in the late 18th century, and so now it's 2014, and there are different ways of interpreting the Constitution and kind of applying it in our time. And so there's a literal way of interpreting the Constitution, which we call formalism, and so it kind of says, the Constitution says this, therefore it says this. There's no other way that you can interpret it. And the people that usually are kind of favor this type of interpretation tend to be more conservative, more like on the Supreme Court there's a Republican Justice Scalia, and so they say the founders wrote it this way, it means exactly this. And then there's the realist interpretation of the Constitution, which says that we go by case, and we kind of have a sort of looser interpretation of the Constitution, and basically, at our highest level, the Supreme Court, the 9 Supreme Court justices are ultimately kind of in charge of seeing how our Constitution fits in our society. And so I'll give you a little background on inalienable rights. So if you want to understand sort of inalienable rights, we have to look at what a social contract is. And a social contract is sort of like each and every individual gives up a little bit of their own liberty to a central authority in order to have collective security. And this central authority is government. And so there are different political philosophers. The most notable is one of the most notable in regards to this is John Locke. He said that there are certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and property, that should not be given up to the government, in order to have a social contract. And if you give these rights up to the government, you have the right to essentially revolt. And so it says that. So it kind of ties into like the Declaration of Independence, talking about how each individual is endowed by our Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and how everyone has these rights just for existing. So now Shelby is going to talk about inalienable rights and the modern times.
So you've been given a bit of a brief history about how this nation came to be and the principles that we live by, but now the question is, how do we implement those principles today? Like, how have they continued over to like 200 years later? And the first and foremost, the number one way that we continue to exercise our inalienable rights is through practicing and continuing to fight for total equality. The number one way that we exercise this in a peaceful way is through protesting. There's been a number of protests over the years that people have done that have gone unnoticed, but the major ones that most people are familiar with, the first one is the LGBT. Another one that is a good example is the the Occupy Wall Street, which was, revolting against the quote-unquote 1% of the community or that controls the money. Another one that is more recent, actually, and it's going on right now, is the fight for continued net neutrality, which is an attempt to keep the internet unregulated so that it can remain open and public for the entire nation.
What is the first one?
The first one,
What is the first protesting? The first example that you have mentioned?
the LGBT protests.
Could you LGBT?
Lesbian, bisexual,
Okay.
transgender, and gay. And then there's also now a Q added to it, which is questioning. The second one is the employee requirements regarding discrimination. So you are protected by law to from being fired based on your sexual orientation, based on your religion, and based on your gender. Going along also with these rights, you also have the right to exist as a hate group or an overzealous. So one of the things that also continues with the idea of having these inalienable rights is that you can exist. Like, no matter if it's good or bad, you are allowed to be. So examples of this are the U.S. Baptist Church, the KKK, Black Panthers, and the neo-Nazis. These are not things that we are proud of, but part of being a free nation is that you can exist. So it may not necessarily be a good thing, but you have to take the good and bad, and that's part of being in a free country, is that you can. One of the more controversial, or these are the two more controversial ones right now, sexism. A lot of people, when they think sexism, they think of feminism. The thing about sexism here is that they're also beginning to recognize that sexism is also against men now as well. There's a lot of pressure against them to provide money, to be kind of more unemotional. We're slowly coming to recognize the fact that gender equality exists both for men and for women, and they should be treated equally. Post 9/11 is another one of the more controversial ones. After 9/11, there was a lot of policies implemented, a lot of security measures taken, and there's also this idea of executive control. This one is kind of what Wesley put in there. If you see something, say something. So this idea of profiling has become very prevalent in today's society. Increased airport security. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed just.
We witnessed that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that I have too. Like, you go in, they search everyone. It's kind of one of those things where it increases what she was talking about earlier of this inherent distrust of the government, because we don't feel it's just pertinent to our safety anymore. We feel like it's violating our privacy.
Can you like more explain, if you see something, say something? What is it?
Basically, the idea, just like I said, the idea of profiling. So, like, if you see anything that you personally consider to be, like, mischievous, or...
That could be like ethnic or racial.
Yeah.
In New York, just so you guys know, when we'll go places, you'll see a lot of signs that say this, specifically because of what happened in 9/11. So, sorry if you guys feel uncomfortable in our country, but that's like part of like their new policy towards trying to prevent something like 9/11 again.
So the last one I want to talk about was the Patriot Act. This has been something well known. I don't know if it's well known around the world, but it has been extremely controversial here. I actually didn't know until recently that the USA Patriot Act, this is an acronym, and it stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism. So this has been something that we've had to deal with in regards to our rights, because they've started censoring things. They've started this is basically their reason for intruding on our lives recently.
Representation. The Congress is structured into two separate entities. One is the Senate, and which represents the states. There's 100 seats in Senate. Each state gets 2 representatives. And the House of Representatives, which has 435 seats, and that is based on population. The House of Representatives represents the individuals, and the Senate represents the state to vote. Issues with the way that taxes are used commonly come up because taxes are supposed to be used for infrastructure and different programs within America, but some believe that the ones in charge of collecting taxes are misusing them and taking vacations and things like that, which does happen sometimes. And general dissatisfaction with the elected officials led to the government shutdown. The two parties just couldn't really come to an agreement with each other, and the U.S. government shut down for a week, around a week. It caused every government institution to close down, and I was in St. Louis at the time, so I couldn't see the arch in St. Louis or anything because that's all government. The Statue of Liberty was closed down. Most of New York was, and Washington, D.C., of course, was as well. Inherent distrust of government. There's insecurities that with minorities that exist because even though we are protected and have freedom, that we still sometimes feel like the authority, like police or something, is against us, which they are because they've done. There's different cases of like police brutality, things like that throughout America, and some of the hot topics in America are immigration and police corruption, and how the police handle different situations. Sometimes it's based on a case-by-case basis. Some police officers are nice, some are bad, and just it's like that all over the country. One famous case was actually here at Miami University. It happened where Armstrong Student Center is, and it was called, there was a building there called Rowan Hall. And in April 15th, which is tax day, we have to file our taxes in America on April 15th.
You see it?
Yeah, every year, April 15th. But the incident happened April 15th, 1970. Miami students wanted to protest for against the Vietnam War and for black civil rights. So a bunch of students went inside of Rowan Hall and did a sit-in, which is a peaceful protest where they just sit and refuse to move. Miami University asked them to leave the hall. They refused. So the police were called, and over 200 students were arrested. They pulled them out into the streets and started hitting them and everything, and took them all away in handcuffs. It made national news all across the country. And especially in Ohio, the Cincinnati Enquirer, the newspaper in Cincinnati, the headline said 238 students were arrested at Miami University across the whole thing. So it even happens here, happens all over.
That happened which year?
1970, April 15th, 1970.
Okay, so there are three branches of government in the U.S. There's the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. The reason the federal government is split up like this is because when delegates came together for the Constitutional Convention, they decided that when they split up the powers, it avoids someone having too much power. Okay, so they wanted to avoid having being ruled under a dictator or a tyrant. So the first branch is the legislative branch, and they're responsible for making laws and appropriating money to run the government. This branch is headed by Congress, and the executive branch is responsible for carrying out the laws, and it is also where the president, which is the commander-in-chief, is able to veto laws or bills that are set by the legislative branch, and this branch is headed by the president. The judicial branch is responsible for making sure that the bills that are coming from the legislative branch are constitutional. So just like they study the Constitution, and then if they feel that the bill is constitutional, they will agree on it. And this branch is headed by the Supreme Court. Even though we have like checks and balances here and making sure that not one branch is more powerful than the other, we have this thing called the non-delegation theory, and it's where it's basically where not one branch can't give power to another branch, even though we do. It's happened before, mainly in the executive and the legislative branch, just to like speed up the process of governing. War powers of the president. Only Congress can initiate war. We've seen in the past that the president was able to initiate hostiles without consulting Congress at all. So absolute power of the Supreme Court. This just means that they decide what the Constitution means, and on certain issues that come up.
Well, there are times like where, like if there's something like defensive state, he doesn't have to ask Congress for permission.
He's allowed to. He basically gets to interpret when he thinks the nation is at a state of war. So even though Congress is the only one that has the authority to say we are currently at war, like with a written piece of paper, the president has the ability to decide like I'm interpreting that our nation's at war and it's my responsibility to act.
Yeah, I think he has like 90 days, or the president has like 90 days before to like enact war before he needs to pull out his Congress.
And then also like the Congress's power of the purse. So if the president decides that he's gonna like declare war, Congress can decide, hey, I'm not gonna fund you, so no weapons means.
Although
Yeah.
the thing that there's an act that they're talking about that sets these guidelines. It's been talked about that might actually be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So there's like this constant balance and like trying to like really decide like what does it mean? Because we don't always know. Sometimes it's very difficult to decide.
If the president did that without the consent of them, who will punish him?
It's on us. We vote him out. Like it's like that's like what the whole thing is, that like, you know, we wait till the next election and then if we disagree with what he did, we can get him out.
But then he also be impeached too, and I think that means sending him to trial. It doesn't necessarily mean, it just means sending him to trial. It doesn't mean that he's out at that moment. And then the vice president.
So blurred lines between branches. This is just back to the delegation and giving powers between other branches. You're not allowed to do it, but we see it in the executive and the legislative. Dichotomy between past and present judiciary powers. This just means that how the judiciary branch looks at the Constitution from time to time. Like they could look at the Constitution today differently than they did in the 1950s.
This also has to do with the fact that when during the first initial constitutional conventions, in the past, the judiciary branch didn't have a lot of power. They were often overruled, and now they are very, very powerful. So that's kind of also.
Another kind of important part about the judiciary branch is they are not elected by us. It's a lot of people have like a problem with this because it's people that are appointed by the president that have like there's no like authority. Like if we don't agree with how they're interpreting the Constitution, we cannot vote them out.
Confirmed by Congress.
Yeah.
But they also serve like they serve for life.
Yeah.
Lifetime
serve
terms.
as well.
They can retire at any time.
Yeah.
So.
So to kind of understand America's conception of federalism, you have to understand like what they had in mind when they created the Constitution. The reality is, before the Constitution, there was a paper that constructed government called the Articles of Confederation. And the way they constructed that government, it made it very, like the central government was very, very weak. So it was almost more like each state was a sovereign entity in its own.
I know there was this incident when like Massachusetts has an army and the central government has no army at all, so it couldn't face like Massachusetts. Right?
We'll actually talk about a lot of that this afternoon.
Okay.
Too, yeah. So
So like that original government didn't work out too well because the central government was too weak. So they thought about federalism and how like, you know, it's basically you have a federal level and a state level, and the federal level is not supposed to put its will on the states. But there's a lot of loopholes within the Constitution that allows them to create laws that act as if they're telling the states what to do. They also have a lot of laws that influence the states by offering them money. Like if you look at this graph right here, which it's kind of hard to see, I realize that now. But this will all be shared with you. You can look at like the way like these are the national powers, these are the powers that are shared between the two, and then these are the state powers. So
Okay, so now that we're done with the heavy stuff, we wanted to kind of give you an idea before we get into the cultural things. We wanted to we kind of all agree on the fact that we wanted to share with you that when you're trying to understand our culture, you have to understand that it's going to be very, very different from yours. You all have a very foundational you all have a very foundational culture that you are aware of, that you're familiar with, that you know, it's very clear to you. For us, we don't. We are made, our culture is made by all of us. And part of our culture comes in the differences. That's why we put this picture here, all these different things. There isn't just one specific culture that America is made of. We are made by the differences. So our way of sharing our culture with you is telling each of you about ourselves, so you can kind of see how us together, coming together with our differences, is what makes the culture of this country.
Trevor Snyder. I am a German, Comanche, Cherokee Indian, Southerner with interest in music, art, language, and travel. There's the German flag. This is the Confederate battle flag. It was the flag used during the Civil War when the Confederate States, the Southern states, would go into battle. They would fly this flag, and you can see it all over the South. If you still go down there,
You can see it on 73.
you can see it on
about a mile
73
outside.
also. You're talking the Grand Wizard's house?
Oh, is that? I do not know that, and I would have been happy not knowing that.
So on 71, I believe.
Do you guys know what a Grand Wizard is?
No.
It's like the chief of the KKK.
He's like the man in charge of the KKK. So
What is the KKK?
It's the Ku Klux Klan.
They're white people that do not like minorities.
Yeah.
KKK?
Even
Yeah.
like
They're
like
Yeah,
white Protestant.
This is the American flag, because I'm American, and this is the Comanche Nation flag. I celebrate my German heritage by attending Oktoberfest in Cincinnati every year. It is the second largest German festival in the world. The only one that is larger than that is the one in Munich. I celebrate my Indian heritage by attending peace rallies for various tribes and supporting legislation for Native American rights. There's often rallies and things for Native American Indians to support freedoms and rights, and about getting money from the government and building casinos, things like this, and expanding their land. I celebrate my Southern heritage by displaying Southern values and trying to promote the slow-paced way of living full of all the freedoms imaginable. In the South, a lot of people, they love freedom. They love to do anything they want. If you go down to the South right now and you go far away from anything, you can do anything you want. You can shoot guns in the woods, you can catch animals, you can blow stuff up, you can do anything. It's nice. This is a collage of different pictures. Here's Americans, of course. Here's Oktoberfest, Cincinnati. Tons of people. There's the Germans at Oktoberfest in Cincinnati. And these are people from the South. They play banjos, and it's called bluegrass music. It's really fast, and lots of banjos and violins in it.
Trevor, can you clarify what you mean by the South?
What's this?
I know you are a Tidewater South. I refer to.
I do not.
There are two types of South when you kind of refer to it. There's Tidewater South, and which is like Virginia, West Virginia. Some people consider North Carolina, South Carolina that as well. And then there's called the New South, which is Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, but most do not consider Florida. Some people consider Florida, but not really, because it's like a tourists and things like that. So that area is what I'm talking about. Some people also include Texas in the South, I don't really include it. I include like Tennessee, Kentucky, things where my family's from.
Continuing talking about like backgrounds, like Trevor, on my father's side, like my father and my mother come from two different cultural backgrounds in the United States. So like Trevor, my father's family is like more southern, and so they come from Virginia, and like they moved from Virginia to Ohio for the manufacturing jobs in Defiance, Ohio. And so my father's side was like kind of the only Southerners in Defiance, Ohio, and it was kind of interesting because they were both my father and my mother's side are Democratic Party, but my father's side, so they're the union trade union aspect of the Democratic Party, and so like as a kid, we occasionally go to like family reunions and we play like play guitar or banjo or play ukulele, and that's kind of like one of the way like Southern culture kind of one of our ways to get together. And my father's side was like very middle class, and then on my mother's side, they're from New England, and so they a little bit more like kind of prep school. Like my grandfather and my grandmother went to Cornell and Harvard respectively. So like kind of like a difference between like sort of class between my father's side and my mother's side, which kind of shows like in the United States there are different class differences as well. And so they kind of from a young age I kind of learned a lot about like two different sides of like my father's side more like vocational and kind of like learning how to work on cars and stuff of that sort. But then on my mother's side, what?
Practical?
Yeah, practical. Yes, yeah. And like my mother's side, like my grandparents were professors. Like I learned a lot about like more intellectual, like more of theoretical type things. So that kind of two different types of personalities, but both in like the United States. So yeah. And, what?
Arctic Monkeys.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's my favorite. One of my favorites. Yeah. So you would play. Yeah, you can go.
Okay, so I put all of these fancy words to describe myself. A lot of people here are very, very familiar with their heritage and where they come from. My family is very broken in that we never really had contact with a lot of like my grandparents and stuff because my mother's mother died before I met her, and then my father's side of my family we didn't have any contact with any of my great grandparents. I knew briefly. I knew one grandparent briefly, and he's not like related to me by blood. So a lot of my heritage for me is unknown. I know that my family come from Holland. That's about it. That's kind of all I know about my heritage. Most of my family ties are more just close with myself, my sister, and my mother. As I said, the rest of it, my family's very broken. We're all over the country. I don't have a lot of relationships with them, because we are just, the word broken kind of just, it's very, I guess it expresses it as much as you need to know. For my culture, I consider myself to be a bit of a dabbler. So I don't necessarily I'm not necessarily like an expert on any one thing particular. I like to experience a variety of different things. And often those things, like characteristics about myself and what I enjoy, often conflict themselves. So an example would be like, I'm an adventurer, I like to scuba dive, I'll go bungee jumping, I'll go cliff diving, but at the same time, like, standing in front of a crowd talking to you all is petrifying for me. So and I'm also like a risk, analyzer. So I don't like some risks, like social risks, but at the same time, and I will totally go 100 feet below the surface of the water. It's just kind of it doesn't make sense. One thing about me too that I don't know if a lot of you know, I am an atheist. So that's an interesting part of my culture because while most of you share that religious background and that very close tie in your heart, I don't. I very much believe in science. The Theta symbol is actually in the top right corner there, the A with a circle around it. So most of what I believe is in, what I learn about science, biology, microbiology, evolution. That's where my heart lies. So that's kind of, I imagine, an interesting experience for a lot of you because it's either not prevalent in where you come from or it's just not something you're familiar with. And a lot of that actually prevents me from really connecting with cultures because that is a very, very fundamental part of many cultures. And it is a minority in this country. I am a bit of a pluralist, so in that I accept, I accept everything. I want to experience everything. So for me, to describe what my culture is kind of impossible because I don't have one specific culture. I believe in and accept and want to experience many, many things. I grew up in a very, very sheltered environment, and I'm now just kind of now blooming. I'm now really experiencing, both I have the pleasure to experience all of you, as well as kind of the, I also have the right in that sense where I can explore myself because I don't feel tied to any one thing in particular. One thing I do like to volunteer. Sarah has really been an influence on my life when it comes to volunteering because she's really helped me to kind of see where I want to go with that. Before I came to college, I had no idea even who I was. So, I've just been exploring and stuff, and this is really kind of my time to find out my culture because I don't really know. And that's okay, and that's the beauty of where we live, is that it's okay for me to not know. I'm still searching. So, yeah, that's me.
Alright, so I was born in a family that made the relationships we had with each other like really, really important. It was like family, community, and like the relationships you build with people is the most important thing in life. And as a result of that, like, there's this idea in America that like individualism is the most important thing. That you make yourself based on like what you do by yourself. Like if you have a good job, it's all because you got it. You went out, you put in all the hard work, and it doesn't take into effect like the relationships you built with people on your journey to that point. And so I have sort of like a confliction with that because I believe that it really is like who you put around yourself and who you interact with that makes the difference in how far you go in life. I was also raised that like it's okay to disagree with someone, but you still need to accept that person's thought because if you're never going to learn anything that way. You can have a good conviction in what you believe in, but you have to be willing to test that. You have to be willing to accept the ideas of others and see how that meshes with your thoughts. And I have friends that will get into like knockdown, drag out fights over their beliefs, and then they'll talk to me, and I'll just be like, "That's all right. You can believe that, man." I also believe in diversity because I'm a white male, and the history of my country, white males usually are at the top. And one of the things I believe in is making sure that everyone gets raised up to that same level. And as a result, I kind of have like leftist political views, so workers' rights, equality for genders and races. And I'm a firm believer in social justice because there's a difference between equality and justice because everyone can be equal, but they might have different standards of living.
I'm Rihanna. So, like Wes, I have two different cultures. My dad is from Canton, Ohio. That's kind of like in the north, like an hour outside of Cleveland. And my mom is from Barbados. And she immigrated to the United States when she was 21 years old on a vacation, and then she just never went back. So this is the Barbadian flag. And then that's a picture of that island. It's really beautiful.
Have you been there?
Where is it?
The Caribbean.
Have you been there?
I haven't. Was there last year.
Nice.
It was formerly colonized by the British, and a lot of times I'm like originally from Brooklyn, New York, because that's where my parents met. Because a lot of times when Caribbeans come to the United States, they go to New York. New York is like, you'll probably see that when you go there. New York has like tons and tons of different types of people, and there's like a big Caribbean population in New York. Another thing that's very important about me is I'm a feminist. So I believe in the political, social, and economic equality of both women and men. And that's a very important part of what I do. I'm in an association in Oxford called Women Helping Women, and it's an association that helps women that were sexually assaulted. I'm also the vice president of African Student Union, and that's very important to me because African culture is kind of similar to Caribbean culture in music and in dance, and I really like to dance and sing. I also like to travel, and yeah, that's about it. And this is the one of the T-shirt designs for African Student Union. Barbados is here next to St. Lucia. Reggae, because reggae and soca music is really important to Caribbeans, and that's the Women Helping Women. So.
My name is Rami, and I'm from Palestine. My dad always used to tell me, you're Palestinian first and American second. And I thought that was like really powerful. Like I've always like loved that about myself. I am a Muslim, and I've noticed that being a Muslim in America is like now, like harder now than ever, just because there's so much stuff about Muslims in the media, and also people have their own perceptions about it, and it's just like there's also so many distractions that can like lead you astray. I'm a brother, I am motivated, I'm a friend, I'm the oldest child, a leader, role model, independent. I'm conceited, I'm really conceited. I have a huge
I don't know if I can beat that with a stick, but I'll try, okay. My name's Alyssa Portnoy. I'm from the northwestern part of Ohio called Toledo. It's near Michigan and it's really cold, so I appreciate the summer as much as I can. I'm an only child. My dad raised me. He was a single dad. My mom passed when I was 3. She had breast cancer. My dad then met my stepmom at hospice for adult grief group, and she had also lost her husband. Well, he was waiting for a heart transplant, so they kind of met through that, and they dated for a long 9 years. I'm Jewish, and I try to follow the rules of Judaism as best I can, the ones that I believe in. So I believe that everyone has a personal relationship with God, and no one can determine how you pray or where you pray or if it's out loud, in person, inside of me. I also believe that we should not enforce conversion to Judaism. Jews believe that you should be Jewish from birth, or you can choose to convert, but it has to be for the right reasons. In Judaism, if a Jewish male marries a Christian woman, their child will not be considered to be Jewish because the mom is not Jewish. So a lot of women convert for the nice Jewish men that they find, and that therefore Judaism does not believe that that should be the only reason that you convert. You should actually completely believe in the religion and not just do it because you're pressured to do so. I also believe that Judaism does not allow me to make decisions based on who I like as people, because a lot of my family members, their goal for me is to marry a nice Jewish man who's a doctor or lawyer, and I don't like Jewish men. So there's that. I don't know, I never got along with them. I said I'm an only child. This means that I never had a sibling around to annoy me or to blame other things on. So I learned to take responsibility for my own actions. My dad's also a lawyer, so I can't lie. He knows when I'm lying. So I will always be honest with you guys, because if I'm lying, you'll be able to tell. However, this is also not a good thing, because I never learned how to live with someone of my own age. So when I got to college, it was kind of a culture shock when I was sharing a room with 2 other girls of my own age. I am part of an interfaith family. My stepmother is Baptist, and my dad is Jewish, and they get along really well, and my stepmom always attends synagogue with us every Saturday when we go, and I really appreciate her for that. My parents, I gave them a lot of attitude when I was young. I can admit that. I was very, very bossy because I just told everyone what to do, and it was my way or the highway. And so my parents always stressed please and thank you, and also the attitude when you give someone when you respond to a question, it can really determine how they react to you. I'm a volunteer. I volunteered at the Toledo Zoo. I volunteered at hospice where my parents met. I volunteered at the Friendship Circle, which is a Jewish organization for children with special needs. And I also volunteered at various charities at my high school. And I was able to donate my time, and I learned from other people, like different cultures, not even just in nationalities, but disabled people, people who have recently lost a loved one. I also am a very liberal American, especially socially. I believe that it is a woman's right to decide what to do with her own body, so I do not believe that anyone should make decisions for a woman, especially if they're male, which they usually are, regarding birth control and abortions, because that is her body. I also believe that everyone has the right to pursuit of happiness, and this includes gay marriage. I believe that they should be able to marry like us. If they want to be miserable in marriage, so can we, and we can all enjoy that lovely factor of our life. I believe that the environment is also very important, something we haven't discussed before. Recycling, I love to recycle. Also, it's just the water levels are rising, and Florida will probably be underwater, at least part of it, in the next century or so.
You're a vegetarian.
Yes, I am. He remembers. I'm a vegetarian. This spurred from me volunteering at the zoo. I used to take care of the chickens, so I was playing with them by day and eating them by night, and that just conflicted in my mind. So 7 years later, I still am vegetarian. And if you could go to the next slide. So this is my family. I'm also part of African Student Union. This is me modeling the traditional African clothes with my friend Alaji. These are my parents, my dad, Michael, my mom, Darlene. As you can see, we're in front of a Christmas tree. This is the first year my dad allowed my mom to put up a Christmas tree in our house because we are part of an interfaith family. This is me at the Israeli Fest. There were Palestinian protesters there, and I did offer them water bottles. And until one took it, I said, come on guys, it's just water, I promise. And then they all laughed. So I'm a very big promoter of that. This is my roommate, Neda. I love her. We get along just great. This is me as a baby. Obviously, I was very bored to be in a picture of my mother. That's my mom. And there's at my grandma's birthday. Those are my two parents, obviously. So yeah, that's me.
We're wearing the same dress.
I know. I love that dress, apparently. Okay. Oh,
God. So, who am I? So I chose this
You have to say it.
I know what we use. I am a Negro. Black is not just black. Black like the depths of my Africa. I am a Negro. I chose this. It just made sense to me because I really am proud of my race and my heritage as an African, and born and raised in Zimbabwe. Everything that is practiced, my family, the biggest message is togetherness. With quotes if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it takes a village to raise a child, something like that. So togetherness is very stressed in my family. So we're just very close. So and I just listed some of the qualities I think what makes me who I am. So I'm a son, a brother, a friend, and I have to incorporate a role model for my little sister. If any of you guys have young siblings, you all know they like to copy you all what you're doing. So I have to make sure my accents are good so they can follow you and everything. And Christian, I was raised in a Christian family. My grandparents, both on my mom's and my dad's side, they're both pastors, reverends of the United Methodists. So religion was very stressed at a young age. And I'm also a Zimbabwean, so the flag, I'm very proud to be Zimbabwean. It's just some part of me that's it's always deep. So I'm proud of that. And African, the whole of Africa. I mean, I feel the continent I belong to, just the motherland. Something that means a lot to me. And I also say that hope for change. You know, like in my situation coming here to America in 2008, I feel like I'm very lucky, like, you know, to be here. Like with all like the political violence happening in Zimbabwe, like a dictator was still there, like, you know, we're still going the same issues. And like, so like I feel like my opportunity to be here and like get this quality of education, you know, like it's like not a lot of people are in my shoes right now. People would give anything to be in my shoes. So like I just feel like, you know, it's I have a purpose, you know, like to just like make a difference. Like everything I'm learning here, I also would like to take it back to my country and like make things better. And ambassador for peace and tranquility, you know, this whole violence, my heart, I wish like it all would never exist. Like I mean, like why can't we just like get along with each other and everything? So it really is something that means a lot to me. And optimist, like I'm always looking at the bright side of things, like, you know, even in deep like what I said, depression or everything, I'm always looking at the positive side, so that would just keep me going. So yeah, it's me.
This is me. My name is Ashe Burgess, and my name means so be it, and it's like the Yoruba version of amen. And the reason I gave you both translations of my name or both pronunciations of my name is because I come from an African American family, which means that we are children of the African diaspora, but we are not directly African, so we still appreciate our heritage as Africans in our diaspora. I'm from Cleveland, which is in Northeast Ohio, so I wasn't very familiar with this area when I came down here because it's like polar opposites. This is I lived in Northeast and this is Southwest. I'm a womanist, which is different than just being a feminist. It's a very, there's a very intricate racial undertone to that kind of feminism. And this woman right here in the glasses, Alice Walker, is the progenitor of that movement. I am, like Shelby, an introvert. It's very nerve-wracking talking to you all right now, even though I'm a little more comfortable than I know. I'm creative. I want to be a curator of a museum one day, and hopefully the African American Museum at the Smithsonian. And these is a painting by Wagechi Mutu, and she's one of the most foremost woman community artists. And she often explores Black womanhood and female sexuality. And that symbol right there, the one with the fist, is Black power mixed with the woman symbol, so it's a Black symbol. And that woman up there is Erykah Badu. She is an African American musician. She's very important to me because her music and her songs represent some of the things that I believe in. Like she often explores her African heritage as well as some feminist themes, and she's very positive.
What does introvert mean?
It means the way I energize myself is by being alone. And when I'm in a public setting, it drains my energy. It doesn't mean I don't like people. It just means that mentally, like alone time is very, very important to me. And I have music. And this is an example of hip hop feminism, which is related to woman. Just hover over it, and then click it. Oh, right there. Yeah. You have to notice that this is a very community-based sort of feminism, and children are very Alright, she's shooting this video in the hood, or the ghetto. This is like the ghetto is usually, it's a mono-ethnic neighborhood. Usually that's poor, but in an American context, it usually means a poor Black neighborhood. So there's political reasons and structural reasons why she's shooting this in the hood. She's rich. She could go anywhere else. She's shooting this in the ghetto for a reason.
Just another day living in the hood. Just another day around the way. Feeling good today. Feeling lovely. Just another day living in the hood. Just another day around the way. Feeling good today. I'm feeling straight. Well, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood. Can't go wrong. I feel strong and the flavor's good. I'm
hip hop parade. My team was on vacation, I'm just plain old day in the day. I strap up, step out in every direction. Clock tech, Jimmy hats in case I need protection. So I land, cruise from sound, play out wannabes. A kid in the M3s, keep jack right in front of them. So I play the tech close, my fingers on the trigger. Don't wanna get wet, so they steps, cause mine's is slightly bigger. But better yet, I'm a threat, so you better walk. Or get sketched out and choke, cause I want it to. I stay true blue, I'm hoping it's you too. I got the fever for the flavor of a hoop. So it's back to the block, time to play. It's just another day around the way. Hey, just another day, I get love. Just another day around the end. Lovely, lovely day. Just another day, I get love. Just another day around the end. Lovely, lovely day. Stay. Time to chill, hit the hill, uptown, let's keep the sights. Shoot some pool like the flu, cause the sun on the night. I'm doing the knowledge, it's not easy. Watching the cop.
No. Oh, I was just, no. I was just
Yeah.
Down at the left.
Okay, Kevon could not be here today. He is feeling sick and he's very apologetic for that. First, he wanted you to know that he's a very sexy black male. This is his words, not mine. Quotes, Kevon Armstrong. He would like you to know that he is a born-again Jesus freak, quote unquote. That doesn't mean that he is like a freak in normal life. He told me to tell you guys that he follows Jesus as opposed to the church, and that's how he reflected his way of life. He's an African American who just wants to be called American. He's whitewashed, which technically you looked up the definition. What was that again?
Well, the actual like Urban Dictionary definition is like a derogatory term, but he's kind of like making, I guess, trying to put some like a positive light in that he feels as though he fits better into like what we consider to like be Western white culture,
as opposed to African American culture. He's respectful. He's courteous. I don't know how to say that word apparently. German and Cherokee Indians, so he's got a little ethnic culture in him. He's Christian, as stated before. He's a student. What does that say? Poet. And then he, as far as family life goes, he is a son, a brother, a grandson, a nephew, uncle, and cousin. And so he's got a lot to live up to there. And he's also a rocker. So you guys can ask him more about that when you see him later.
Racism in America. I'm Arab, but I'm not a terrorist. So, racism and discrimination has been a really big issue in the U.S. Since the colonial era and the slavery era, even 250 years after those two eras. And racism is still prevalent today in the U.S. Racism has found a way to blend itself in the mainstream society, mainly through the media. We can see this on shows like Comedy Central, where race and culture is poked fun of for the amusement of other people. Some can argue that race in comedy is a good thing, but it pushes social boundaries by holding up a mirror and forcing us to confront realities we would prefer to ignore. Mainly, if you're in the U.S., you're definitely probably going to experience racism. You guys probably will at least once, maybe, or if you haven't already. I know I have, but I think it's just my friends are assholes. I have this video.
Oh God. Oh God.
That's racism.
So my side is about feminism and women's rights. As I told you before, I'm a feminist. And in regards to history in the United States, women have been experiencing like movements since the early 1900s and before. Women received the right to vote in 1920. It was the 19th Amendment. And there was a women's suffrage movement in order to receive that right. And women have been a vital contributed part in the civil rights movement, as women have been protesters, like firm believers in equal rights and civil rights. And this is a picture for the civil rights movement. And some of my favorite politicians and women's leaders: Michelle Obama, Sonia Sotomayor, she's in Supreme Court, obviously Hillary Clinton, and Rosa Parks. And women's issues have also been increasing political discourse within American politics in regards to like healthcare, like abortion rights, and access to birth control. And also there have been like political figureheads, but also social figureheads such as Beyonce, and like there's a lot, like Adele, like there's a lot of like feminist women within American media. And I had a song from, can you click on that? But skip to like 128.
Do you have a rule that prevent women from they have the personal freedom of giving birth? Do you have the rule that
There, it goes state by state. There are states that it's
128.
Oh, 128. There are states that prevent women from access to abortion clinics, and there's also been like in my district, I live in Cleveland, Shaker Heights, like a suburb of Cleveland, and there have been like moves to close abortion clinics and close like access to birth control within that area. That's kind of more of like a conservative or Republican agenda.
Can you just clarify what it means, because we'll touch on this later. I want to make sure, or what it means to restrict access, because I want to make sure that they're clear that in our system, the Supreme Court has said that no state can simply outlaw abortion, but there are state-by-state differences on restrictions to make it more difficult.
So there are states that don't allow you, that don't provide abortion services. I think there are Planned Parenthoods that like they have birth control like availability, but not all of them have abortion services. And also there are corporations, like we were talking about Hobby Lobby, doesn't provide their employees with birth control services. So if you are working at Hobby Lobby and you have their healthcare coverage, you have to get your own private healthcare coverage in order to cover like your birth control like needs.
No, also some places that do perform abortions, they have like this long process that makes it extremely difficult for a woman to. It makes it uncomfortable for her to go and get it done.
So like religious, like they'll have religious, not leaders, but religious activists that are against abortion, and they'll make it like a part of, like a more conservative state would make it obligatory to have like other options, or like, I'm not explaining this well, or like a religious, from like a religious standpoint. So it'll make like a woman that wants to get an abortion feel uncomfortable, or feel like she's doing something wrong, or feel like she can't do it.
Another important note to do is there's one thing that's kind of in the news right now that's on. I don't know why it hasn't gotten more attention, but there's been a lot of people that are kind of violating like the distance laws that they have, where in order for you to protest at an abortion clinic, you have to be within a certain feet away, and a lot of them, there's a lot of like blurred lines, I guess you could say, for how far they have to be away, because there's some people that are actually now starting to experience violence when they go to get an abortion. So not only are these like social implications, but a lot of people feel like they have to, hide their identity, or kind of like, some people will just avoid it altogether, because the moment that you decide to go there, not only do you already have all this pressure from people finding out about it, but then you also have like this group of people standing in front of the abortion clinic telling you like you're going to hell if you do this.
Can I frame, just because this does relate clearly to what we'll talk about, this is a good example of constitutional rights conflicting with one another. So, for instance, Shelby was talking about protesters outside of abortion clinics. So there is one set of constitutional rights that all Americans have, that there's what's called a constitutional right to privacy, that basically says no government in the United States can restrict your privacy in certain ways, and that's defined by courts. And that includes, for women, the right to choose an abortion, which means that government cannot restrict that too much, but it's a question of degree. So on the one hand, then you have some states who are, Kansas, for instance, the state of Kansas, knowing that they're not allowed to ban or prohibit abortion, but they do everything they possibly can to make it difficult. So it's like, well, we won't ban it, but we'll require you to wait 24 hours before you obtain one. And we'll require you to read some information trying to convince you not to do it. And we'll require you to watch a video of a fetus. But it's all sort of like trying to restrict it in practice. However, with clinic protests, you have other people who have a different set of constitutional rights, First Amendment freedom of speech, and they have the right to go and protest. And that includes trying to convince people who are trying to exercise their privacy rights to an abortion to convince them not to do it. And so you get this conflict between different people exercising different constitutional rights. And the lines there get very blurred. Our Supreme Court just last week actually issued a major decision on that issue in particular, because the state of Massachusetts had a law in the books that said protesters at abortion clinics had to stay a little more than 30 feet, if you know feet. We don't do a metric system here. But
10 meters.
Yeah, sort of, like what, 12 meters or something, whatever that is. Yeah. And that was challenged in court as a violation of protesters' freedom of speech. And the Supreme Court sided with them and struck down the law. But what that means is now in Massachusetts, it'll be more difficult for women to exercise their constitutional rights. So these conflicts are constant, if that makes sense. I just wanted to frame it in those terms.
Before we play the video, I have a question for everyone in the room, actually, and I kind of want to backtrack it to when she brought up women's suffrage, a little bit about the history. How many people here are familiar with the Night of Terror? Raise your hand if you're familiar with that. It's called the Night of Terror. Is anyone here familiar with that? Okay, the Night of Terror is actually a very important yet very hidden part of history for women's suffrage. It was a night about within a couple years of when women were granted access to suffrage. And the Night of Terror was a night that, similar to some things that happened in your country, something that our government keeps very, very hidden. both from other countries from knowing and from clearly like our own citizens. One, I don't remember the date, but there was a night like,
1917.
yeah, you can't even like, it's very hard to
It's
even
not
like
on
find
Wikipedia.
on
You can
like,
find it on the
yeah, like you can't, yeah, it's very, very hidden. There was a group of women that were protesting outside the gates of the White House, and that's all they were doing. They were standing with signs, just exercising their right to protest for access to women's suffrage. In retaliation, the government and police forces beat the women, they tortured them, they starved them, and they jailed them for many nights. And many of these women, you can find them like on the internet. I don't know many of their names, but simply for exercising this right, just so they wanted the right to vote. They were tortured, and they were beaten, and they were jailed. Like this happens here. Within the last century. Like, this does happen here, and they are so much better at hiding these things. The only reason I'm even aware of this event is because I took a women gender studies class. I had no idea this even existed. This is not something, that they're proud of. And if you search, like, long and hard for it, you can find pictures of these women were, like, mutilated. They had, like, their breasts cut off. Like, they were...
Breast cut off.
Yeah, they were tortured. They were like, it's disgusting that just the fact that they did all this and then they hid it from everyone. I mean, you can see this is just an example of we are portrayed as this wonderful free country, but you don't there's so many things that go on here that even our own citizens aren't aware of because of the fact that they erase it from history. They just choose not to teach it because they don't want us to know about these things. So I kind of felt the need to explain part of our history, just to kind of show you, that things do happen here. And on a lighter note, let's watch an awesome video.
So this video, it's a Beyonce video called Flawless. The message is kind of women are kind of objectified, and we feel the need to always be beautiful at all times. And I'm not gonna play the whole song because it has profanity, but Beyonce, although she's a big icon, she's a diva. She is also very, very politically aware. Not necessarily politically aware, but she's a feminist. And she added a clip from a Nigerian writer. I can't remember her name. It's on the slide. I can't pronounce it. But yeah, so.
You should aim to be successful, but not too successful. Otherwise, you reflect
maybe.
themselves smaller. We say to girls, we teach girls to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller. We say to girls, you can have ambition, but not too much. You should aim to be successful, but not too successful. Otherwise, you reflect the man. Because I am female, I'm expected to aspire to marriage. I'm expected to make my life choices, always keeping in mind that marriage is the most important. Now, marriage can be joy and love and mutual support. But why do we teach girls to aspire to marriage and we don't teach boys the same? We raise girls to see each other as competitors, not for jobs or for accomplishments, which I think can be a good thing, but for the attention of men. We teach girls that they cannot be sexual beings in the way that boys are. Feminist, the person who believes in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. You wake up, house up, run around in it.
It's not a song, just heard someone talk.
What was that?
We didn't hear the song, we heard someone talk.
That was the second
That was
song.
a portion of the song because I didn't. It has profanity, so I didn't want to play it.
It has bad words.
You
can not everyone
That's
here
a
wants to
good
hear
song,
bad
though.
words.
It's a good song.
Okay, my second section is Black History, and that is the African American flag, and it's the Black nationalist colors of version of the American flag. And these are my talking points, so I'm just going to tell you what I have to say. I am African American. This means that I trace my ancestral roots to the continent of Africa. My people were enslaved and kidnapped to the American colonies in order to work the fields of the American South. This was so because the climates in most sub-Saharan African countries are similar to southern weather. The humidity, heat, and most importantly, the mosquitoes killed off European indentured servants because they were not used to the weather, and the mosquitoes carried malaria that was unknown to the European immune system and therefore was a very deadly disease. The indigenous peoples on the land, the Native American or the American Indian, were hard to enslave as well because they knew the land better than the European colonialists and were able to escape from their captors. The conditions of slavery were violent, degrading, and all-encompassing. They violated the basic right to life and the tenets of responsibility to humanity that any society that considers itself civilized would maintain. Tenets that include the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Much of the original African culture was decimated by the cultural erosion brought by forced assimilation. African Americans are forced to create their own culture based off of African conditions, but mixed with the survival techniques they use in order to adapt to and outlive chattel slavery. Their instruments were taken from them, their indigenous religions were given stigma, and the conversion to Christianity was forced. Much of the culture made by African Americans is a patchwork of African traditions, survival tactics to cope with their new socio-political situation. Instead of the formal instruments of their countries, they use their own bodies. The unique and specific vocal traditions of African Americans, including singing styles like beatboxing, scatting, and dance styles like hip-hop and tap dancing and pumping, are all a direct result of making new ways of music without traditional and cultural tools they were used to. This theme of resourcefulness and making a way out of no way is reflected in every cultural aspect that African Americans have created, from cooking cultures to industry and business, and most importantly on the political spectrum, from before the Civil War to the Civil Rights era and beyond. And one of those tactics was the Black Panther Party. I didn't know that it was on the slide as like an overzealous thing. I would have had to like talk about that before if I had seen it, but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, I have to
Okay.
show the
She
video.
had a video.
Yeah, I have to show the video. Go ahead. This is footage of the Civil Rights era.
In May of 1963, protest against segregation in Alabama brought the issue of racial conflict to a head.
Frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south, where legal remedies are not at hand. Redress is sought in the streets, in demonstrations, parades, and protests, which create tension, threaten violence, threaten lives. We face, therefore, a moral crisis, country and people. It cannot be met by repressive police action. It cannot be left to increase demonstrations in the streets. It cannot be quieted by token moves or talk. It is a time to act in the Congress, in your state, and in the legislative body, and above all, in all of our daily lives. It is not enough to pin the blame on others, to say this is the problem of one section of the country or another, or to draw the facts that we face. A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all. Those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality. This is one country. It has become one country because all of us, all the people who came here, had an equal chance to develop their talent. We cannot say that 10% of the population, you can't have that right. Your children can't have the chance to develop whatever talents they have. But the only way that they're going to get their right is to go in the street and demonstrate. I think we owe them and we owe ourselves a better country than that.
Okay, another prominent social issue that we have right now in today's society is the LGBTQ rights. As I told about earlier, LGBTQ stands for lesbian, bisexual, or lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and the Q was added recently. It stands for questioning. The LGBTQ project was founded by the ACLU in 1986, and it's the ACLU is the American Civil Liberties Union. It focuses on 5 main areas: basic rights and liberties, parenting, relationships and marriage, and youth in schools, and transgender discrimination. So basic rights and liberties, we are still struggling in this country to grant this minority group just your basic discrimination rights. So like a lot of what we consider to be inalienable rights, they are still exempt from some of those rights. So like in housing, employment, public places, in business, organs for free expression, privacy. An example of restrictions, especially with parenting, that's a good example. There are still a lot of states that they are not allowed to get married, they are not allowed to adopt children. So that's, to us, that is a basic, like something you should have, the right. You should have the right to declare your love, not only in your own home, but openly. For no matter what you believe, no matter what your sexual orientation is. Parenting is, like I said, is a very big one. There's a lot of, currently there's a lot of lawsuits going on in the South that they're suing some of the states because there have been, people that have lost their spouses, they've lost people they love, and they have children, and they don't have the rights to those children because they are not technically married, so they don't have any benefits for them. So for them, like, they're on their own. Whereas in a heterosexual marriage, you get support when that person dies, but for them they don't, and they're still struggling for that. There are 19 states in America that acknowledge same-sex marriage on the state and federal level. There, youth in schools. There's a lot of bullying that goes on. Like I couldn't even find anything on YouTube to like show it because it's, as I mentioned again, there are certain things that are just hidden. There's a lot of like violence and discrimination that goes on in schools. Kids are made fun of. Kids are beaten up for being gay. So they don't even have like an accurate consensus in this country of how many people do exist in this minority because they remain, as we call it, in the closet because they fear discrimination. The violence is actually is a pretty prominent issue for this community, especially in like southern states. They just don't acknowledge it. They have. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the term like beard, but that's a lot of, especially with like gay men and women, especially gay men, they will, marry into a heterosexual marriage, and they, there's a lot of things right now where they'll come out, like 10 years later, because they were afraid of being discriminated against. It happens a lot in politics, where people are, they claim to be heterosexual and they continue like that because, as I said, they fear being exposed. Transgender discrimination is a fairly new one that people are experiencing. They're trying to get rid of all the restrictions for that because, like, especially for this portion of it, they aren't even recognized for their identity. Period. Like they do not have basic rights for even like their gender identity. I mean, that's very difficult for me to explain because I am not, but I mean, kind of just try and like imagine going through your daily life, and having people come up to you being like, are you a man or woman? Like, it's very difficult for me to explain it because like I said, I'm not a part of this specific culture, but this one is a very, very sensitive one in our society because they are made fun of. They are discriminated against. They don't have the basic rights because they don't necessarily have the right to even like exist in society. I have a video for it. It's by Michael Moore and what's her name? Mary Lewis. I've included this video because I wanted to kind of show how, similar to a lot of your cultures, we also use music to express our dissent toward political issues. So you can play like the first like 30 seconds or so. It kind of just shows. first 30 seconds after the word started.
This shows something.
Yeah, it does.
When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought that I was gay, cause I could draw. My uncle was, and I kept my room straight. I told my mom, tears rushing down my face. She's like, Ben, you've loved girls since before pre-K. Sure. Yeah, I guess she had a point, didn't she? Bunch of stereotypes all in my head. I remember doing the math, like, yeah, I'm good at Little League. A preconceived idea of what it all meant. But those that like the same sex had the characteristics. The right-wing conservatives think it's a decision. And you can be cured with some treatment in religion. Man-made rewiring of a predisposition, playing God. Oh nah, here we go. America the brave still fears what we don't know. And God loves all his children. It's somehow forgotten, but we paraphrase a book written 3,500 years ago. I don't know.
And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm.
If I was gay,
So this is my part. I'm here to talk about religion, just as a preamble to my thing. I am not doing this to diss on any religions. It's just what I have noticed as a Jewish person in my public high school and schools before that. Many schools in America only recognize major certain Christian holidays. So whenever you have a break in school, it is usually centered around a Christian holiday. Christmas, Easter, etc. Black Friday is usually off. I have Good Friday. Oh, Black Friday is always off too because we like shopping.
But that's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, true.
That's a US holiday.
Good Friday. Good and black. You know, they're both good because I love shopping. So, so spring break was always centered around Easter. This actually worked out for me because that's when Passover was, or Pesach. Always went to school on Hanukkah. Always did. It's like our Christmas. It's like so important to us. Rosh Hashanah, our New Year, always had school. Yom Kippur, I always had school. So I had to either A, miss a day, or B, go to school and, you know, kind of defy what my religion. But never would they have school on Christmas. Never. You would never see that anywhere. I believe that church and state should be recognized as separate. Now, as we've stated before, the lines are kind of blurred, okay, because we do say the Pledge of Allegiance a lot. I know I did when I was in grade school. You was your right to sit down, but with everyone else standing around you, feel kind of, you know, awkward, uncomfortable sitting down when everyone else is.
You consider the Jews a minority or majority?
Oh, minority. We're 0.2% of the population, not even 1%. There was a case, Braunfield versus Brown, actually, Brett actually told me about this. There was an Orthodox Jew, a very religious Jew, living in Pennsylvania. He was a merchant of a shop, and our religion requires us Friday night to Saturday night. That is the Sabbath. We believe God made the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. So Friday night to Saturday night is our seventh day. He had his store closed on Friday night to Saturday night, but where he was from, every store was required to be closed on Sunday because that was a major religious holiday, or not religious, it's a holy day for Christians, which I understand, I accept. He, however, wanted to open his store on Sunday because, you know, if he's not only losing 1 day of business because of his religious holiday, but he's losing 2, but for a religion that he does not follow. So this case actually went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and he lost in a 6-3 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court, because, and I quote, although the court had previously held that the Free Exercise Clause prevented the states from passing laws that forbade the exercise of religion or required citizens to say or believe anything in conflict with their religious tenets. States in some cases could regulate conduct, even if that regulation burdened citizens of a particular religion. So basically what that means is that this was a special case. Even though that he is allowed to close his store on Saturday because of his religion, he is required to also keep it closed on Sunday, even though that he does not participate in the holy day of Christianity. So that did not go over well with him, obviously. Besides Judaism, I wanted to focus on the fact that Islam, Hinduism, atheism, and agnosticism were not discussed as well. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. If you go to a public school, at least where I'm from, I know Brianna was different because she was raised
from a Jewish community.
Very big Jewish community.
So I get Rosh Hashanah off, I get Yom Kippur off. We did have Passover off. We did not have, well, we had a long break, so some of Hanukkah was off, but not
Hanukkah changes every year, so yeah, I understand.
We had some of it off, but because like both my neighbors are Jews, so like Passover and Yom Kippur and all that stuff is like a very important part in like my life and my community. So
unfortunately,
all schools aren't like that.
I did not have that that in my school. It was formerly known as winter break, but even the teachers and the principal, I heard him slip up once when talking to me, incidentally, called Christmas break. And I mean, I celebrate Christmas with my stepmom, but we also celebrate Hanukkah. There were Christmas concerts, toy drives, youth groups. I remember an incident that I had. Young Life is like a young adults come together to talk about the Bible. I was not able to make an announcement about my Jewish youth group because, quote unquote, there were not enough Jews in my school to care enough about you making that announcement. Okay. There were no mentions of Islamic culture, and anyone who did not believe in God or were not affiliated with a specific religion was looked down upon, and I blame this purely because acceptance was not taught in schools like this. It was focused on a straight path. Atheism especially has a hard connotation. My mom was atheist. Her whole family was atheist. This was partly, in fact, due to my grandparents were in the Holocaust, and they didn't believe that God could ever let something like that awful happen to them, which is, I mean, that's a fair, idea. Many have experienced discrimination in the school and workplace, and discrimination is often, what? Or I thought you were snapping at me.
No,
Oh,
sorry.
you're like trying to get my attention. Never mind. Discrimination is often the form of exclusion. So, we, as mentioned before, if you're atheist, you don't really have that sense of culture with that particular sense of culture with those who do believe in God. Their refusal to accept existence and derogatory. Some friend of mine told me that they were called godless machines. I mean, I'm not a machine. My mom was not a machine. She was a human being. And if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay. This is from a show called The West Wing. Now, this is not my personal opinion. I mean, part of it is that we shouldn't, it highlights what Shelby was talking about, gay rights, and also religion within state. This is just showing that, TV does express the, religion and how it's handled. So if you could play that for me. You can skip, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Right there.
Thanks a lot.
I wish I could spend more than a few minutes with you, but the polls don't close in the East for another hour. There are plenty of election results still left to falsify. With so many people participating in the political and social debate through call-in shows, it's a good idea to be reminded every once in a while. It's a good idea to be reminded of the awesome impact. I'm sorry, you're Dr. Jen Jacobs, right?
Yes, sir.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
The awesome impact of the airwaves and how that translates into the furthering of our national discussions, but obviously also how it can forgive me, Dr. Jacobs. Are you an MD?
A PhD.
A PhD?
Yes, sir.
Psychology?
No, sir.
Theology?
No.
Social work?
I have a PhD in English literature.
I'm asking because on your show, people call in for advice, and you go by the name Dr. Jacobs on your show, and I didn't know if maybe your listeners were confused by that and assumed you had advanced training in psychology, theology, or healthcare.
I don't believe they are confused, no, sir.
Good. I like your show. I like how you call homosexuality an abomination.
I don't say homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does.
Yes, it does. Leviticus
18:22.
chapter and verse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions while I had you here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. She's a Georgetown sophomore, speaks fluent Italian, always cleared the table when it was her turn. What would a good price for her be? While thinking about that, can I ask another? My chief of staff, Leo McGarry, insists on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 clearly says he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police? Here's one that's really important, because we've got a lot of sports fans in this town. Touching the skin of a dead pig makes one unclean, Leviticus 11:7. If they promise to wear gloves, can the Washington Redskins still play football? Can Notre Dame? Can West Point? Does the whole town really have to be together to stone my brother John for planting different crops side by side? Can I burn my mother in a small family gathering for wearing garments made from two different threads? Think about those questions, would you? One last thing. While you may be mistaking this for your monthly meeting of the ignorant tight-ass club, in this building where the president stands, nobody sits. Toby.
I don't know what it said still.
He said that's how I'll beat him, as in like his opponent. So that was, it's not like my personal opinion, but like this is how it is shown in TV shows that sometimes ridiculous to use your own religion to, you know, say what other people can or cannot do, especially if you're not them. And then our last slide, very important. This is one of the commercials that came out during the Super Bowl, and it gives me goosebumps every time I watch it. This shows that America is more of a melting pot, or as we like to say, a salad bowl, because we look different, but we still taste delicious. And, and not in a weird way, but you'll see why it gives me goosebumps. It shows how we are America and what makes us beautiful. If you could please play that.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, por tus olas de granos ámbar, yo piscina sakuti, soy baba na mga brutas. America, America, God shed His grace on thee. Orba hijane ke saath tajte chad la mera bria. Verra tu verrière tirotard from sea to shining sea.
We're not trying to get you guys to
Buy Coke. We actually don't sell Coke on Miami anymore, but I don't think it's because of this. But so this just shows that there's a lot of languages and cultures that make America beautiful. And the ironic thing about this is that after this commercial was shown, there's a lot of backlash on the internet. A lot, you know. Muslims aren't American, Jews aren't American, Indians aren't American, Americans are this, that, and the other thing. Look around. We weren't all white when we came here. We actually took this land, and we came from different countries, which makes it beautiful. And the fact that we can all get along as one nation is what makes us beautiful. So that was the point of this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed our presentation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're gonna hold our questions, and you can think about this for